Monday. We're happy to have all of you with us. We are starting session number 6 of Roadmap for a Moral Society. We are right now on Monday at around 8 p.m. joining for another one of these sessions, and we welcome you as well, all of you that are watching here, be it on YouTube, Facebook, whatever streaming channel you're using. We welcome you to join us while we are still streaming this from Zoom on our Zoom talk, where we are all having a discussion on these beautiful quotes from the Baha'i writings. Now, just a really interesting note, some of these writings are provisional translations, which are from the writings of Bahá'u'lláh or Abdu'l-Bahá, from the Baha'i writings that are not yet translated into English. They are provisional translations. We welcome you to discover with us as we go and we read these beautiful quotes that are curated to separate topics. Our subject today is going to be about Thanksgiving. It's a very good topic, especially since it's almost November, and in the United States, we'll be actually celebrating Thanksgiving in a few weeks. With that being said, we thank Mr. Gilbert Hakim for putting together these PowerPoint slides and taking the time to have them curated by slide, these beautiful quotes that we can all share, discuss, and review together. Before we begin, however, we want to say an opening prayer. And right after opening prayer, we'll get right back to our discussion, continuing from last week. We thank all of you who are here with us, and we look forward to our new friends that are joining where we leave off. It's okay if you want to watch earlier sessions. We welcome you nonetheless to this session. Thank you.
I'll start. Praise and glorified are thou, O God. Grant that the day of attaining the holy presence may be fast approaching. Cheer our hearts through the potency of thy love and good pleasure, and bestow upon us steadfastness that we may willingly submit to thy will and thy decree. Verily thy knowledge embraceth all things thou hast created or will create, and thy celestial might transcendent whatsoever thou hast called or will call into being. There is none to be worshipped but thee. There is none to be desired except thee. There is none to be adored beside thee, and there is not to be loved save thy good pleasure. Verily thou art the supreme ruler, the sovereign truth, the helping peril, the self-subsisting. Above.
Thank you very much. We're going to start with the new subject, Thanksgiving. And we need volunteers to read.
I'll go ahead.
Oh, Terry, all you.
All right, sorry. Didn't mean to interrupt. The essence of charity is for the servant to evidence the bounty that God hath bestowed upon him, and to render thanks unto him at all times and under all conditions. That's how the essence. And should good betide thee, render thanks unto thy Lord, and should evil visit thee, be patient. Nay, under all conditions, render thanks unto thy Lord. And this is the tablet that is addressed to Mullah Muhammad Zarandi, her name Nabil Azam.
Charity is for the servant to evidence the bounty that God had bestowed upon him. So this is really, it's a grace that God created one through causality to be known. So the question here is, what is the best way to show your gratitude where without it you wouldn't exist? Now the question becomes of the ability that was given to us in terms of ability to choose. And ironically, this God-given ability to choose your path has been limited by other humans. But when you're looking at the gift of free will that we have to recognize him or not is the most generous tool that the creator can give the creation, to even ability to deny him. So the key here is thanks unto him at all times and under all conditions. So this process of thanking him for our existence we have to remind ourselves that without those abilities, we would be mere animals, basically. It wouldn't be any different. And of course, from previous dispensation, they were insinuating that without the revelation or progressive revelation, humans would be no better than animals, and civilization wouldn't even start. So Abdu'l-Bahá specifically mentions that the source of creation of civilization is the revelation and nothing else. And without it, laws of jungle would persist in general. So we need to recognize this ability to choose, an ability to reach our goals with the free will to accept or reject them. So here it says, obviously, through this journey, we have to live in societies and communities that put restriction to what God-given freedoms that allowed humanity in general. So here, even during the time of duress, you have to be patient, because those evil doers or evil actions that are harming people is not from God, is misuse or abuse of the Holy Spirit or commandments of God that causes harm. So you have to be patient. Nay, under all conditions, render thanks unto thy Lord. So during prosperity or demise, you always have to remember who the Creator was and what was bestowed upon us to differentiate ourselves as an intelligent being with the free will. All right. Any comments on these?
Well, I think that something unique about this quote, everything you said is, of course, important, I think, to consider when reading this quote. I think as well, in addition, that we can consider how these blessings we get from God are something that when we recognize them, we can explain how they are those blessings that they truly are. So an example would be when someone has a fortuitous occasion that something good came upon them, they acknowledge the Creator for that fortuitous event, that it's just going to be the right time, the right place, that all of a sudden the bounty appeared. So when it says, to me at least, to evidence the bounty that God has bestowed upon him, what is more humble than describing the fact of why something is? I hope that makes sense what I'm saying. When I've noticed a lot of people, they can be ingratiating with their tone, they can sound kind, but they're not very humble. But then when they're humble and they help you understand why they have that humility, it seems to take you to another level of understanding. Do other people feel this, or is it something that I haven't explained well?
I think you did an okay job of explaining. I think a lot of it has to do with, I guess we're living in a society, and let's just say that, okay, you come across, let's say you win the lottery and you now have, $100 million. It's like, obviously you're going to pay your hukukala, your 19%. But from what I understand is that you have to, they're not going to accept the money. You're going to have to explain to them why you're giving the money. But, the thing is just, you have this good fortune, and I guess it's customary that, they say, hey, spread it around, give to the poor and all that kind of stuff.
So I think you made it sound a lot smarter than I was intending. I literally mean in the basic sense, when people attribute things that they say they were lucky. A lot of people nowadays say, well, I was just lucky. People will say that they had luck that benefited them. I think that a way to evidence the bounty of God that God has bestowed upon us, rather than attributing it to good luck, it is God. It's not luck. It's a bounty of God that we receive something. And I'm saying that in a true sense, that we have so much bounty that flows upon us that we take for granted. And this gratitude allows us to live a happier life. When we have that gratitude about this bounty that we receive from God, that we may really forsake or take for granted. And both of which is bad. Rejecting the bounties God gives us is bad, but also not acknowledging the bounties we get from God is bad. And I think that this idea of all this bounty we get from God allows us to be very charitable as our heart becomes generous, because we recognize how God is generous towards us. Let's talk statistics. Almost every human being in the world is subject to so much chance in the context of harm befalling them, that when it comes down to it, it's a bounty that you go your life without having a car accident. If you live in a car driving country, it's a bounty if you go your life without falling prey to harm that people in the country you live in fall prey to. Because statistically speaking, you're likely going to get in that same harm as well, but you didn't. But at the same time, even if harm does come upon us, we still need to be grateful. And as Mr. Hakim, I think, so eloquently stated, a lot of evil happens in this world because people misuse good things. They corrupt what is good and cause it to be used for bad purposes. But at the same time, I think we should, continue to be grateful. And because we're grateful, we become more humble, and that humility allows us to feel generous so we can share with others. Because imagine a lot of people don't have the bounty of being born to the same parents. Some people are born to parents that give them actual mother's milk, give them actual raising in a home with two parents, give them actual schooling where they get to become literate, read and write. They give them access possibly to college where other parents don't. Some parents will give access to college to their children, pay for the college, and even provide for tutors. Some children don't receive that from parents, be it for any reason we can think of. Some are unable, some are able but choose not to. But these are all bounties that we receive. So even more a reason to feel grateful and thankful that we've received bounties, that our parents did something for us. And again, that's God that made that all possible. So we thank God once more for that bounty. I can go further, but the premise is that every single thing that comes in our life that's good is a bounty from God. And acknowledging it and evidencing how that bounty appeared allows us to be happy and allows us to feel generous. It allows us really to realize the value of charity, because when you are a product of so many people doing so many good things to you, the essence of charity it's a little more apparent because you have something that you acknowledge came from God, not simply that it's a privilege, but it's a bounty from God. And I don't know, have we defined what bounty means from a dictionary here? So we know what the word means, so we're all on the same page. So correct me, please, from an actual dictionary, but a bounty is something that's like a gift. So nature's bounty, providence from God. The natural world has bounty. We call that something that is available to us. We didn't earn it. It doesn't belong to us. It's given to us as a gift. So bounty from God is something that we don't deserve. We didn't earn it. We're not entitled to it. It's given freely, and it's not given equally. It's given as a matter of it being made available to you because it is so, not because of per se you being special, specifically you in any way. It's just it's a gift that's given to you, hence bounty. So I'm gonna end my point. That's just a reflection on this I found important.
So the first segment that we discussed here relates to creator and creating an independent entity in his own image with potentiality of the attributes, his attribute in them. But that doesn't end there. The reality of it is that through Holy Spirit and progressive revelation, he has given instruction set of how to live to avoid pitfalls of using your free will in an environment that would cause harm to yourself or other people. So this issue regarding for humanity not to go through the discovery process through trial and error, God has given us that infusion of the spiritual energy through these manifestations that propagate the civilization and makes people adopt.
Question, is that bounty that's being provided to us, or do we deserve it?
Well, it's a grace of God, basically, or you call it bounty. This is the process that allows free will of individual to choose to recognize God through the revelation itself. Because you can't find the essence of God. You only can know him through his words that comes through the manifestation, which is the solution to the problems that humanity would face at the period that these manifestations would come. So this reality that God didn't create, but he gave us instruction set also. Of course, throughout ages, the remnant of the prior religions have been altered to a degree in practice, not in essence, that is causing harm now. And we can see that very visible. But the latest manifestation is the one that humanity has to adhere to go to the next stages of progress of civilization. And you can clearly mathematically prove those laws are produced, they're efficient cause. They're produced to make sure that, first of all, it doesn't cause harm, and then it creates the next goal of humanity, which in this age is unification of mankind, which you do not see this in any other prior dispensation because humanity wasn't ready at the time of other manifestation for this law, this edict to be exercised. So this instruction set which comes from the view of the manifestation, seeing the problems that would be caused in the future and would give instructions that how to avoid it. And we can reflect this in our own life. If the knowledge that we have by living decades and decades, and we had this knowledge during our youth, we wouldn't make majority of the mistakes that we made during that period. And a lot of it has to do with certitude. And of course, when you're young, depends on which culture you grow up. For example, we lost a generation of baby boomer kids to Freudian ideology that you have to leave kids to experiment everything so they can find their own way, which was completely false and created the chaos that we currently have. That the meaning of the religion is basically a process, that spirituality, that when you're lost, you go and look for it. Instead of using the Holy Spirit as the blueprint of your life to adapt to it. And that's really where we are today. So even the meaning of religion in the Western culture has changed to a belief that is private, and each individual can choose their own beliefs of what they accept or what they reject from their own religion, which obviously Holy Spirit is not a self-service that you go and pick and choose whatever you want and assemble and create your own version of that religion. And it's a cohesive methodology for coexistence of humanity in peace. And of course, any violation, whether individual or community or a national violation of these laws, causes conflict for individuals, for families, for communities, and so on. And we clearly see this. And divisions that has occurred, for example, last couple of decades in US clearly shows violation of those laws that were basically presented to humanity in mid-1800s. And that's why you have divisions and you have disunity. So the systems that was in place, technology has accelerated that process and created a caste system that didn't exist even a couple of decades ago. But we're making the same mistake that 1400 years ago humanity was faced with. And that was a caste system, that people of the same nature, origin, or arts, or let's say profession, would be pushed into a certain caste, whether it was caste of rulers or caste of ecclesiastical or caste of merchant or caste of peasants, and so on and so forth. But ironically, we see even today, due to the social medias and internet, you see this caste system being created. People are not interested in having the whole knowledge of reality. They're only interested in what benefits them. And unfortunately, technology allows them to create those systems, which is detrimental and to the society as a whole. And now we see the remnant of it in our political systems, in our educational system, in a judicial system even. And people have bias because of their affiliation. They override the laws of the land because they can. So that's really where we are, and we don't appreciate the blueprint of the society that these manifestation brings in to make sure we don't fall into these traps that is man-made, whether it's technologically or culturally has been imposed on humans. All right. Any other comments on this segment? So two things we have to be thankful for. One is being created in the image of God with the free will. The second one is the bounty and grace that we receive by getting these instruction set that allows us to live as a human being, to make sure that we don't cause harm to ourselves and other people. But during this process, you may get harm because you follow the Holy Spirit, and obviously other people would have conflict with it, and you may get harm following that process. But ironically, all of it is for education of humanity as a whole, and would augment your soul if you walk the path of Holy Spirit and you receive harm because of it. But it's the mechanism to educate humanity. All right. Let's see. No one wants to read?
I can read. Render thanks unto God that he had made known unto thee what none of his creatures had known, and had taken hold of thy hand with the hands of divine power, and delivered thee from the pit of heedlessness. Verily no God is there but him. He verily is a protector of all such as have down nigh unto him. As Hardship and Abdu'l-Bahá. Should I continue the rest?
This one first.
All right.
So
In
render
this,
thanks unto God that he hath made known unto thee what none of his creatures had known. So here, it doesn't matter how you can concoct a model or legal system. Always is going to cause harm and favor one group versus the other. So here it says that the Holy Spirit that is revealed through manifestation is the purpose of creating a cohesive community that humanity can live in peace. When you're looking at, for example, a man-made free, for example, legal system, supposedly that we have in the United States, every iteration of elections, you see many laws gets enacted and many of them gets abrogated. Because, and majority of the time, they cause more harm than good. So you see that even the best legal brains that we have could not produce a system that would be applicable in all conditions versus humans that try to enact laws to safeguard individual rights would fail. And we see these failures over and over again. And some of it has to do is because they're violating the Holy Spirit. Because those laws that they pass are targeted to a specific group of people. It's not designed for everybody to benefit from it. So you see the polarization of the political system is creating this pendulum that goes from left to right, from right to left. And meantime, the citizens are losing in the process. Because these laws only benefit certain people, not designed for the entire country to benefit from it. Now, motivations can be different, but in reality, that's what's happening today. So here, again, this Holy Spirit, an alignment of the secular laws to the Holy Spirit would yield benefits, which is particularly right now is not being followed. And that's why it causes harm. So here, and had taken hold of that to be the hands of divine power. Now, if you look at measly laws that they pass, and you look at the vast library of the knowledge that manifestation divulges to hundreds of volumes, and there is no single conflict between them. There is no human being that mathematically can actually produce these many instruction sets that have no conflict with each other. If you look at the laws that we pass in your own Congress, you see that you violate. It was interesting. I was listening to Elon Musk, and he was saying that one branch of government is were trying to fine him because he wasn't hiring undocumented.
Well, no, let's be more clear. So he was stating that the asylum seekers, that where they are documented because they're seeking asylum, they are registered with the system, that he was not having, his company was not hiring asylum seekers. The reality was that there was a law elsewhere that was really asserting we should hire asylum seekers, but given the nature of SpaceX specifically, where it's a rocket science company, they're working to send rockets to space, and it's very high-tech technology. It could be used for intercontinental ballistic missiles, ICBMs. It's also in our laws in the United States that we not hire people who are not cleared for security purposes. So there's this inconsistency, whereas I believe it's frivolous lawsuits and uneducated lawyers engaging in a lawsuit when they should know better. But for the purpose of the discussion, he was disguising the conversation as it's a personal attack against him in the context of an environment that's not supportive of his political views. But the reality is, in this case, that you have one company that is, for national security purposes, to have higher protocol, higher standards for who to hire. And then you have supposedly representatives of the government who are engaging in a lawsuit to say that they have to hire individuals who, under another law, are not cleared or allowed to be cleared to be hired in a company that works with really, really important scientifically advanced technology that could be used to carry nuclear bombs, be it against the United States, if that knowledge is transferred so easily. So it's a real concern that you have all this inconsistency in legal doctrine but also that you have agents of the government who themselves should know better, that they also engage in enforcement that may be very erroneous, like it was in this circumstance that's being cited.
It's trying to show is that the laws that already have a purpose and different division of the same government create conflicting laws. So that's the point I was trying to make, versus when you're seeing volumes of the spiritual revelation that has no conflict whatsoever. So it's not humanly possible to create a set of instruction set that doesn't have paradox in it. It's not possible. So that's why this is one of the major proof of the existence of the manifestation is their literature. That's the miracle, is the writings. Because no human being can write similar to it with laws that have no conflict whatsoever. So that's really what is saying and mentioning divine power, hand of the divine power, and deliver thee from the pit of heedlessness. So it doesn't matter what you do. Now, when you're looking at the laws, even scientifically, Abdu'l-Bahá mentioned is the same way of inspiration that these scientists receive to solve a particular problem or create new physical laws or discover physical laws. But they spend their entire life working on that subject, and eventually they have a breakthrough and they invent or discover a particular physical law or create a particular device. Now imagine how you have to create volumes and volumes of these laws, and the whole dispensation of these laws coming merely maybe a couple of decades from one person. So it's really not feasible to be able to, a human being be able to assemble all these laws that have no paradox in them. So verily no God is there but him. Only God can send these instruction set. He verily is the protector of all such as have drawn nigh unto him. So whoever follows him would benefit from this Holy Spirit, from this instruction set. All right, next one.
Which one are we on? Number 3 or 4?
Number 4.
And this day the concourse on high and the maids of the Abha paradise are all eloquent in their praise and thanks of God, inasmuch as the lights of the divine revelation have enveloped all. And this is a tablet addressed to Mirza Akka Munfar Ismail Nanib from God Passes By.
So here you see the source of this revelation and maids of the Abha paradise. So these are holy souls that testify to the expansion of the Holy Spirit and coverage. And Bob mentions that during this cycle of dispensation, all the ladder of knowledge would be revealed to humanity. So you see, this is the first time God revealed a complete set of instructions. And those holy souls and original followers, letters of living that understood and sacrificed their lives toward propagation of the religion left us this legacy of thanking God to a degree of their certitude that they become martyrs. And this revelation through technology has spread all over the world. So now the knowledge of the doctrine of Baha'i religion is exposed and presented to humanity. Okay, any comments on this one?
Well, I'm looking ahead to what you're posting later, and it's just like, okay, I guess in times when you're in trouble, you're still be thankful unto God instead of complaining, like, oh, woe is me, why am I having such a hard time? And I guess what Baha'u'lláh is trying to get us to, get away from the mindset of being, somebody who complains about, bad things happen. It's just like, okay, why do bad things happen to good people? And it's just, maybe it's just one of those things that we try to have the attitude that, whatever happens in this life is temporary. It's not a permanent condition, whether you're in good fortune or if you're going through trials and tribulations and such.
But remember, the life itself, and Abdu'l-Bahá mentions that it's the process of learning, and learning usually comes through pain. The question is that if you want to avoid majority of tribulation that you go through life and tests and difficulties, if you religiously follow the doctrine of the Holy Spirit, you would avoid those pitfalls. Now, obviously, methodology of the Baha'i religion is to create friendship and unity. And it's very rare that you get in trouble when you present this view and interact with other people in the same manner. Now, reality is you may attract harm to yourself because of that process, because of following the Holy Spirit. And that process Abdu'l-Bahá mentions is like taking the deficiencies of gold when you put it into fire. That means it cleanses your soul, where knowingly you accept the harm by defending the position of the Holy Spirit. So that's really the process. And because of your certitude and the examples that you present, that sacrifice you make, accepting harm, is a source of education for others, and even for people that are harming you because of your belief. So that's really the whole premise related to journey of life that are related to following the Holy Spirit. Short of that is obviously we're humans and we make mistakes. And majority of time, from my own experience, failures that I had in relationship or commerce, was all related to violating those laws. Although certain aspects of secular society you have no control over. Even Abdu'l-Bahá mentions the wealth is like a heap of sand, and based on uncontrollable event can move from one area to the other. So we shouldn't accept that we did something wrong because we weren't successful in certain ventures in general. But separating your secular activities from a spiritual side, again, application of the Holy Spirit in your life would protect you from trials and difficulties that would be created if you wouldn't have followed the Holy Spirit. Obviously, the second, which relates to getting discriminated against or persecuted because of your religion, augments your soul. So either way, you benefit from execution of the Holy Spirit or following this blueprint of future society that latest manifestation is brought in. So that's really crux of what this process affords us to do. And ironically, majority of time, if we knew the outcome, right? If we knew the outcome of one process, even with the full knowledge of that may cause harm to ourselves, even in the secular society, at least you have this peace of mind that I knew the outcome. And knowingly, I made a mistake. Versus I was subject to chance. So it's really a contrast between randomness and purpose, basically. So let's read on.
I'll go ahead and read again if nobody else will. From His Holiness Abdu'l-Bahá. One must give thanks for divine bounties, even in times of hardship and trouble. For in the full flush of prosperity, anyone can be thankful. It is related that Sultan Mahmud once cut a slice of melon and gave it to Ayaz, and the latter ate it, expressing thanks and pleasure. But when later the Sultan himself tasted a portion of the melon, he found that it was very bitter. How couldst thou have eaten such a bitter melon? He asked Ayaz, yet betray no sign of displeasure. The latter replied, I have eaten diverse passing, delicious and sweet, viands from the hand of the Sultan. When I deemed it not fitting for this one occasion to look upon the bitterness and to express displeasure, wherefore if man who is immersed in the divine bounties suffer on occasion of little discomfort, he must not be distressed nor forget the divine bestowals.
Really, go ahead.
Okay. Okay, and son of the Sultan, Sagbart mentioned in the section youth, and the founder of Gulf. And Abdul was the page of Sultan Mahmud, who was on account of his honesty and trustworthiness, was elevated to the Vizierate, surviving until the reign of Sultan Mahmud, the son and successor of Sultan Mahmud. But okay, Okay, I guess those are just notes. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. Sorry.
Is that it says you go through life and you should cherish every instruction set that you give, which you didn't pay for, and you're using an experience of a divine creator to tell you the path of living happy and healthy without harm. So this process, obviously, if you follow that process, you avoid many of these dangers and pitfalls. But when you're dealing with a secular society, obviously you're exposed to other people's misdeeds in general. So the question really is that even when you apply some of those laws, Holy Spirit, and the result would be negative and you would be exposing yourself to harm, you still would accept it because it's part of the whole. But as Abdu'l-Bahá mentioned before, that even those areas where you get persecuted because of your belief and your actions, that would augment your soul. So either way, you should be thankful if during the application of the Holy Spirit, you fall into trouble and you attract harm to yourself. So ultimately, you have to be always thankful of the instruction set, even if it attracts harm to you. Any comments on this one? If not, we go to the next.
I do.
Go ahead.
So we discussed earlier the quotes. I can't see the quote anymore. We moved on. So we discussed earlier the quotes from Bahá'u'lláh about this idea of divine bounty. And, given everything that was said, another perspective in everyone's life that they can see tangibly with their hands, their five senses, it's very easy to understand that we have a lot of good times and we have a few bad times. And when you have a person who's loving, for example, the use of the king, the sultan, the king, this person receiving something that was bitter yet still appreciating it is a beautiful analogy for us to understand our relationship to God, that we get so much good from God. So when something bad happens, we understand that there's so much good to be thankful for, that yes, we've fallen in bad times, yet there's so much to be still thankful for. And to not lose sight of that allows us to continue for our own sanity, for our own spirit to not be dampened. It allows us to continue another day without being so sad and in despair. We can be more useful to ourselves and our society. I think it's something that it's very unique, this idea of divine bounties coming upon us and our thankfulness, because how many people don't believe in God just simply because they'll cite examples of bad things that happen in the world? I can't say with a definite number how many people believe this, but I can tell you in my own life, I've had a lot of people ask me, how can I believe in a God if this same God allows for people to get raped, molested, killed, maimed, tortured, and so on? That's from a lot of people, they'll ask that question. And it's really an interesting concept that people believe that our life in this world is meant for us to be happy. My question is, knowing that we get bounties and that bounty causes us to be happy, since when is our existence one that we're supposed to actually be happy all the time?
We didn't dwell on the segment which relates to problem that we cause for ourselves. But majority of time is because of violation of this Holy Spirit, that we don't follow the path of God, and through that we receive harm, which had nothing to do with God or the Holy Spirit or manifestation of God. So when you're dealing with environments where secular society doesn't follow the protection that is afforded within the Holy Spirit, obviously their citizens would suffer, whether it's within the family or whether it's in community or society as a whole. But those elements that you related to abnormalities that occur in human interaction has nothing to do with God or Holy Spirit. So the question is, if a head of the family comes home drunk every night and causes harm to the kids and the wife, is nothing to do with God or Holy Spirit. So violation of the law of avoiding substances that alters your behavior, when it's forbidden, when you violate those, you cause harm to yourself and harm to people around you. So we have to differentiate that. So if I take a hammer, hit my toe, there's no relevancy to Holy Spirit, God, or the instructions. So discussion that we're having here relates to communities, families, and societies that violate those laws are subject to harm, which is caused by themselves and had nothing to do with God.
So this following of the law of God, or living under the protection of the Holy Spirit, is a bounty that we're to be thankful for, so that we avoid that harm, and therefore this gratitude is what we feel. Is that correct?
The whole point is we have to differentiate between the mistakes that we individuals make from violating those laws, or our communities violating, or our societies violating it. So when they violate those laws, there are consequences. And that's really where the efficient cause comes in. So who's punishing those people? It's themselves, it has nothing to do with God. So if I pass a red light, and majority of time I don't run into accident, but guess what? Statistically, eventually you're going to get hit. And you may maim yourself, but this has nothing to do with God. So we shouldn't, in this, normally the atheists or agnostic people are bringing this concept that any harm that is produced by created humanity has related to ability of God to control that. If God would have controlled that, then we would be animal, not humans. And certain laws would regulate our behavior, which was instinct. That's why we're one step above the animal kingdom. And we have freedom to choose to do good or to do harm. So this is really what we need to differentiate with. So majority of the wars that are occurring is because of this violation of the Holy Spirit. Of course, for the time that revelation has come, an application of the antiquated laws, which has become a culture, is causing harm. And Muhammad himself would say that learned people in the end time, the learned people of Islam would be the enemies of Islam. They would cause harm in the name of God. And we clearly see that today. So even the manifestation of God predicted the end time when the use of his instruction set would cause harm when the new manifestation comes in. So that's why Baha'u'lláh abolished the class of clergy and took distinction away from humanity. So we don't create caste system. But guess what? Our new political system is creating a caste system that was abolished by Muhammad 1400 years ago. So anyone that violates that there is no distinction and create different identity for different group of people is equivalent to creating caste system. Because they want to enslave people. That's what they promote. So identity politics is poison. Because we are all human. We have all same genes and all same needs. And we are all created equal. And we are spiritual being that has a physical body. Whether this physical body is different or we speak different language has no relevancy to your spirit. But when they violate those edicts and creating identity politics, they're trying to disrupt and destroy the core of the revelation of God. And they're going to suffer for it. And we see that today. Anybody that comes and says you're different than your neighbor because they speak a different language, a different color, or whether they're this gender or that gender, obviously they're trying to create this unity, which is opposite of the Baha'i doctrine for unity of mankind. So now you see there are consequences of our own actions. Whether it's because of the advantages in consumerism to segregate people into different castes or different segment or different identity has a
Well, I mean, if you separate people, especially families, imagine instead of selling one refrigerator, one appliance, you have a set of appliances per family member that lives alone.
course. But again, these are some of the drawbacks in terms of when you're moving away from ethics in general. Because the outcome is not reinforcing the sanctity of the family or sanctity of the society, is to make a better consumer out of them. And if you running into a circle like a ferret, trying to keep up with stuff that you consume that you don't even need, obviously they feed you whatever satisfies your urges and needs, material needs that you have. And you will stay in that wheel forever. So this is really the key that you see, and it's not subject to one party versus the other. All of them do the same thing. And of course, the social media doesn't help either, because that's the source of creating the segregation. And you don't have any independent agency, whether it's news or media, to really create a reality of events that are occurring. So anyone that creates this unity, you have to avoid.
Well, would you say, when you say create a reality of the events, would you say it's more recording the actual events that occur, not just editing the events that occur?
The editing is just interpreting, instead of saying the reality, the way the event occurs, they interpret. And because this interpretation, the same agency may interpret the same event five different ways to feed five different people with different identity. Because remember, the capitalism has no soul. It's amoral. It feeds whatever the consumer asks for. So they may even give contradictory news to different people, because that's what they want to hear. And that's really where we are today. It's unfortunate. As I said, when I came to this country half a century ago, it wasn't like this. But here you have the system that is not functioning anymore. It doesn't matter what representative you choose to go to the houses of Congress, because ultimately 97% of the time they vote the same way. That means that the only handful of people that run the show are making those decisions, not the individuals that you have elected to go to Congress. So head of parties are making decisions, which obviously they are in the pocket of special interest that feeds them. So the system doesn't work, but it used to work. You know, you had a middle left and middle right, and then you had very little far left and far right. And that process, due to this particular segmentation of society, the middle has disappeared. In action, they have disappeared, but in reality, they're still there, but they have no power whatsoever, because the representative they elected are already sold off. They're not the ones that are making the decision. So that's really what the picture is. Now, what was the solution of the Holy Spirit in this case? The solution was every member of the elected individual to the houses of Congress should relinquish their association to their parties. They should vote for betterment of the whole society, and they only should fear God. That was the instructions. That means each individual has a right of their own, and their own will that would represent their own elected constituent. Is it happening today? Obviously not. So that person that elect, collectively sent, have no power whatsoever. So you see, why is it that way? Because they haven't relinquished that link that they have, and they only fear the head of the party, because if they don't agree with the guy, he's going to cut his budget for next election. So they won't get re-elected. And that's really, the system is, I'm not sure why we got to this point, but it's reality that we all face. All right. All right. Let's go to next.
I guess I'll go ahead and read. I'll volunteer. How conducive to mindfulness it is to reflect upon the bounties of God, mindfulness which itself means towards discernment. How pleasant is this gentle breeze, what extraordinary powers and capacities are here. How good it is for man to appreciate the value of these bounties and arise to show forth thanks. He set out about discharging the functions worthy of his station in promoting the peace and well-being, the prosperity and success of all God's servants. And this is from Badilia Athar, volume. And these remarks were made during a stroll taken on 19th of May, 1913, in one of the Paris parks. I guess this is Abdu'l-Bahá in Paris.
You see that the instruction set that we have that is targeted to solve a specific problem, like abolition of child labor, prohibition of alcoholic or substances. So these are the key elements that materially you can show objectively that causes harm to society and causes harm to the individual. So here, even having the knowledge that is causing harm gives you a different perspective when you're looking at the societies that are violating it. See? How conducive to mindfulness it is to reflect upon the bounties of God. They already have given you the solution. And you can see the consequences of applying it or violating it. So you can discern the outcome by looking at the law. How pleasant it is, gentle breeze. Even having this knowledge, what extraordinary power and capacities are here. With the knowledge and certitude that the laws are created for the betterment of humanity. And you don't need to beat your brains out to figure it out. It's just given to you. How good it is for man to appreciate the value of these bounties. Even if you need to live in a society that carries guns and lives with alcoholisms and alcohol usage, at least you know that you already know about the solution. And you don't blame God that is causing these problems in the society. And arise to show forth thanks, to set about discharging the functions worthy of this station. Now that you know that the solution, is your duty to propagate it. to propagate this Holy Spirit, this solution to today's problem, and promoting the peace and well-being, the prosperity and success of all God's servants. So this is the beauty of this model. It doesn't discriminate whether you believe in God or not, whether you're from one group or the other, what gender you have, what language you speak. Like a mathematical model, it always renders the right answer. If you violate it, you're going to bear the consequences. If you apply it, you reap the benefits. And it applies equally to whoever would apply it. Now, what this reminds us of, even physics, right? Sciences. Nobody cares whether the person who invented this was from which religion background or which country. So Newtonian laws that were in place, nobody cares who invented it. They're using it to make humanity progress. And equally is applied to whoever with whichever background those physical discoveries help. So here you see promoting the peace and well-being, the prosperity and success of all God's servants. And this is what you need to be thankful. It's the ability to distinguish between right and wrong. And you don't have to experiment yourself to figure it out. All right. Any comments on this?
Well, I guess a comment comes to mind is that, okay, we don't have to experiment with, I guess, finding out what works and what doesn't work, since it's already been given to us by the manifestations of God. It's just like, okay, we don't have to. It's like, okay, you don't have to touch the burner to test that it's hot. It's just like, you have a child that, touches the fire and you have a parent that kind of swats his hand away. So, it's like protection. So it's like, you try to guide a child correctly so that they don't destroy themselves. And it's just like, that's why parents supervise their kids. I mean, that's why, it's, in as far as, the scientific world, it's just like they say something about society is built upon the shoulders of the past. I mean, people find out the hard way in the past, and it's just like, okay, you learn from their mistakes. And then, same thing, with history, it's just like, okay, that's why we learn history. You see in the past, it's like, bad things happen because people did some things. It's just like, so you're supposed to learn from history instead of trying to repeat the mistakes of history. But unfortunately, it seems to me that society is headed down a dark path because they refuse to learn from history. It's just like, I shudder to think what's going to happen after this election, but it's just, what can we do?
But remember, reality has a different view for different people. And this is really where the crux of the problem is. When you're looking at alcohol, for example, one glass of alcohol with very low alcoholic content may help alleviate some of the heart problems. But reality is that you can argue that if you drink 1 glass of wine a day, it would improve your health. But the reality is that no one can control their appetite based on the mental condition that they have at the time that they're consuming this to limit that process. And the impact of it in the society is that you end up with over 20-some million people alcoholics in the United States. So you see, when you say the full knowledge of the impact, then you see whether that glass of wine is worth 40,000 people that perish every year because of the consumption of alcohol, or 400,000 people that get maimed because of it a year. So you see, if you present the whole picture, then people can make the right decision for themselves. But there is no venue except the Holy Spirit that could present reality in its totality. So this is really the key that we need to present. Or, by the way, for example, a minute amount of opium reduces the heart rate and is medicinal, actually. But can you just use that portion of the opium regularly and not get addicted to it? So it's not possible. So you can talk about the positive side of it versus what actually societies that perish because of the use of the opiates. I think in Florida alone, someone dies from opiate every minute. I don't know statistics in other, and fentanyl is killing people left and right. So question is that this is a violation of the Holy Spirit, and there are consequences. So these are really key elements, and that's really why we need to be thankful that we don't fall into this trap that said, I don't harm anybody if I have a glass of beer after a gruesome 10-hour work that would calm my nerves. It's a very good argument. But reality is that that one glass may not stay there. So this is really the key. You need to evaluate complete impact to the individual, to the family, to the society as a whole. Same way abortion it is. What are the impact of it? Obviously, one can argue that this is the right of the individual. Control of their body. And ironically, exercise of that is causing depletion of population, which now we're facing in many, many Western societies. Short of all the psychological problems and physical problems that creates. But the whole point is, even when they're trying to pass laws, they exaggerate and they make villain out of the other side. So no one can really have a source of the truth to really find out what are the consequences of these decisions that the society makes. So what is the alternative? Alternative is Holy Spirit. Alternative is certitude in terms of the instruction set is correct, even if you don't want to follow it, and you accept the consequences of your actions. But this gentle breeze, that this knowledge that you know what the truth is, makes you thankful of the source, that God didn't leave his creation alone to suffer. And he's sending these manifestations to give us the path. All righty, looks like we're coming to the end of the session. Any other comments on this? If not, we can do a closing prayer.
All right, I'll do the prayer. O Lord, my God, assist thy loved ones to be firm in thy faith, to walk in thy ways, to be steadfast in thy cause. Give them thy grace to withstand the onslaught of self and passion, to follow the light of divine guidance. Thou art the powerful, the gracious, the self-subsisting, the bestower, the compassionate, the almighty, the all-bountiful. Abdu'l-Bahá.
Have a nice night, and hopefully we see everyone next week.